All right, Remy Stern, welcome to the Marketing That Works podcast. Thank you so much for being here. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Drew. Great to be
Oh,
here.
it's my pleasure, man. And I reached out. So for everybody who's listening today, I reached out to listening and watching. I'll probably use some of this video as well. I reached out to Remy because I found a very interesting book in my uh, lifelong search for marketing knowledge. A book called "But Wait, There's More." And by this guy who's on the podcast right here. And Remy has written a really, really interesting book on infomercials, which is a topic that I'm so curious about. And there are great stories within the book. But Remy, I want to jump right in off the top, and we'll probably get deeper into the book. But through your time writing, consulting, writing this book, what do you feel like? Just right off the top, what do you feel like is marketing that works, even in 2020?
Um, I think knowing your audience is so important, and knowing your target market. And I think that's what these guys really were really good at, knowing their audience. And then, I think they don't get a lot of credit, especially sort of back in the 80s and 90s when the infomercial industry really started to grow and become ubiquitous. The power of data and the power of testing, which I think honestly they were at the forefront of before we had sort of digital marketing and the ability to run lots of tests and really do that sort of performance driven marketing that we have today. I mean, they were doing it with 1-800 numbers in the 1980s, and they were obsessed with data. Even the founders of QVC or HSN, I mean, that was what set them apart at the time. They were all about data. How is this performing? How do I optimize either my offer or the demonstration that we're doing of this product to drive sales. And if you think back to the 80s, I mean, no one was really thinking about data at that time. You had your ad that you created and you put it out there and you hope people would buy your product. With TV, these guys were creating, 20 versions of the same infomercial and tweaking them slightly and putting them on different stations and trying to figure out what worked. And so I think that was a really interesting discovery.
Yeah, and I think, and again, you talk about this in your book, but wait, there's more. So I'm going to put that in the show notes, of course, for everybody to go pick up. Um, and it's on Amazon. I think you can get it on Kindle, but I was able to find it through some other booksellers. But it's a great book. But when you're talking about data, it's really the only piece of data that matters, and that's what these guys and men and women that were really pioneers, which is the conversion data. Like nothing else mattered other than getting people on the phone and converting them. And you do talk about in the book the upsell piece, but it is so interesting that they're spending their money on what could have been a short spot, but most of the time were these 20 or 30-minute spots, or maybe even longer with Ron Popeil and different things like that. But yeah, talk about that a little bit more about the, the direct marketing aspect, the conversion aspect of it. And, you talk about some of those tactics maybe at the end of an infomercial. So just talk about some of those that are inside the book. Like we talked about a little bit off air was the irresistible
Yeah.
offer, but some of those things.
Yeah, I mean, it really depended on the product. There were products that they could really demonstrate in the course of 60 or 90 seconds. It was a pretty simple product and you really didn't need a long demonstration. So there was no sense in purchasing, a half-hour spot to demonstrate something pretty simple. But then you had a product like an oven, right? A kitchen gadget that could do 125 different things, right? So you really wanted to walk the consumer through all of the potential applications. And they realized that, as you showed them another thing that they could do, it just upped the sort of perceived value of that product. And I always found it, it worked with me that like they would show things that you would never in your life probably ever do. But in your head, you said to yourself, this product is more valuable because, I could use it for this food and that food. And they may not even be foods you like, right? but what was so magical about it is that you thought in the back of your head, well, if I ever wanted to make that food, now I would have the kitchen gadget that would allow me to do that. So for those longer infomercials, they really structured them. They realized that people, I mean, this is the challenge, right, of late night television, like infomercial marketing is like, I've got to get you up off the couch at 2:00 in the morning. I've got to get you to go to a phone in those days. I've got you to go get your wallet, take out your credit card, call a number, and purchase a product. That's really, really hard to do in the middle of the night when you're sleepy and you're sitting on the couch. They also, realized that they had to get you they couldn't sort of wait until the very end of the infomercial because people would tune in for just sort of a handful of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So they really structured them into sort of like 3 blocks where they would do a demonstration, kind of show you what the offer was, then put the number on the screen. You're building momentum to this call to action, and often the first one wasn't sort of for 6 or 7 minutes into the infomercial, and then make you think that that there was a very limited time period in which you could order this product at this price.
Right. So the
And it's just
scarcity,
this
urgency, right, play.
Yeah, and they were very, very clever about how they did that, and would often do several versions of it and test which would work the best. And then put a countdown on the screen, which they were the first to you see that maybe on game shows, but the idea of putting a countdown actually on the screen and creating this urgency to get to the phone to order this product. And then it would really sort of start again. They'd go back to the kitchen and show other potential applications for this device and kind of go through the sequence 3 times in the course of a 30-minute infomercial. And it was it was the product of a lot of trial and error, and seeing what was going to convert people into purchasing that product, and what was the best way to sort of structure that offer. Should it be 4 payments? Should it be 5 payments? What should the price look like? What should we throw in to sort of create this perception that there's more value there? So that sort of irresistible offer. So you get to the very end and they say, we're going to give you 2 of these.
Right.
For only $10 more, you're going to actually get 2 of these. So you're going to get 1 for you, and you're going to give 1 to give to your mom for Mother's Day, which is right around the corner. How amazing is that? You're going to get 1 and your mom is going to get 1, all for the same price. I mean, it was the kind of marketing that got people to leap off the couch at 2:00 in the morning, run to the phone with their credit card and order it, which was just amazing.
So I want to touch on that for a second. The learning that you did on the double the offer. I find myself and just being a marketer, like I watch ads with more intention. Most people are kind of consuming them in the general sense. I'm always kind of watching the formula, the breakdown. And it never ceases to amaze me that part of the formula, the double the offer at the end, because, and I'd love for you to give your thoughts and background on this, is that it feels like what they're doing is they're anchoring you in, again, this irresistible offer. They're anchoring you that it is amazing and it's worth a lot. And then they show you a price and then they say, but we're going to double your offer for the same price and throw in free shipping and throw in something else. So that's why it gets people to act, because they're like, they were already thinking the higher offer was a good offer, and this just made it unbelievable. So did you see that? I mean, is that part of what has come out of this entire research?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there were different ways to kind of create that offer. So you could double what you were, give people 2 for the price of 1. You could also not share what the price is. And Ron Popeil, who is really sort of like, legendary in the infomercial space, and is sold so many products successfully. I mean, billions.
And you got to spend some time with him.
And I got to spend time with him, and he was just amazing. He often wouldn't share what the price is at all during sort of the build-up, and then would start saying, he had this countdown that was just, if you can find it on YouTube, and it's worth watching just because it's magical, where he would say, this Showtime rotisserie should really be worth $249, but you're not going to get it for $249, and you're not going to get it for $229, and you're not going to get it for $189 or $169 or $149 or $129 or $119 or not even $99. And I can't obviously do it justice because you have to watch him.
Yeah.
He's the master. And, you know, he set this expectation that that this product was worth $249 at the outset. And then by the time he's discounted it to, you know, and he never actually tells you what the actual full price is, and he discounts it, you know, all the way down to 4 payments of, you know, $19.95. And that's very intentional. They actually never tell you what the full price is. They always tell you it's the payments and what the payment is, because they never want to say, you know, it's $99 or it's $89. It's always 4 payments of $19.95, right?
That's interesting. Yeah.
Because you just perceive it as less. If I tell you this is, you know, 4 payments of $19.95, your brain, and they've done psychological research, your brain perceives that as less than telling you that it's $100. And it's just it's amazing how they've, you know, they figured this kind of stuff out on the fly. And then you go to, you know, the professionals, the scientists, and they'll tell you that they've done, you know, tests in labs and found out that this is true, you know, which I always found just amazing. And, you know, by the time he tells you it's 4 payments of $19.95 or $17.95, whatever it is, you know, you've started at $249 and now you're at this irresistibly low price. He doesn't have to double, you know, he doesn't have to give you 2 ovens for the price of 1. Maybe he's going to throw in a set of kitchen tools that, maybe he's going to throw in a recipe book. I mean, it was all those kitchen products often, you know, dicers and slicers and ovens would often come with a recipe book. And often it was actually the same recipes that were just recompiled in a recipe book that they would just, you know, it was
Yeah.
You know, that they could produce for free. That cost nothing to send you a big recipe book, but that just upped the value in your mind. And I think, you know, certainly these days, thinking of things that you can do to kind of create more value around that offer, and things that you can do that are really sort of no incremental cost as a marketer to add to the package. You know, I mean, I often will buy something on Amazon and it will say, you know, it comes in a carrying case, and I'll ascribe value to that because I'm buying some like kids toys, and then I'll say, well, it comes in a really nifty carrying case. And I actually, you know, in my mind, if I see 2 products, one comes in a carrying case, one doesn't, I will assign value to that carrying case. And it cost them 5 cents, to throw in a little carrying case, maybe 5 cents to add that to the offer. But that kind of stuff works. You're raising that sort of the value in the consumer's mind.
Yeah.
And I think they were really good about doing that on infomercials, just making it so compelling that you just felt, you know, like not buying it would be dumb.
So I want to ask a question about repetition. You talk about that a little bit in the book. But I was curious to ask you this coming out of the book. Do you feel like repetition of the same thing I'll get there in just a second. So repetition of the same exact line over and over again, or the demoing, because when I think about the demoing of a Flex Seal or a Billy Mays back in the day, they were doing repetition, but they were doing it with different demos. They were basically saying this works on this, and this works on this, and this works on this. So maybe those are 2 different things, but what are your thoughts on repetition?
Yeah, I mean, I think repetition really, really works. I mean, you have to do it in a way where it doesn't feel repetitive to the person who's listening, because if it really feels like they're just saying the same thing, people will tune out. But you know, if you see somebody like, you know, that's doing a demonstration on an infomercial, they're often, you know, they've got a slogan that they keep coming back to. You know, for Ron Popeil, it's set it and forget it.
Oh, right. Okay. And yeah, right. I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah, they'll go back
get the crowd into it. Yeah.
Yeah. But they will also sort of repeat themselves in doing that demonstration, because honestly, like, you know, for Flex Seal, for example, he's just showing you 1,001 things that you can use with Flex Seal. And he's making the same point again and again and again and again, but he's doing it in slightly different ways with slightly different applications just to drive home that point. And that, you know, and when you have that repetition combined with also that energy, which is something that you really, you know, that was what got me watching infomercials, you know, when in the 80s, when I was, you know, a teenager, was you saw these guys that were larger than life. I mean, and I was amazed, you know, in doing my research to find out that a lot of these guys had come from county fairs where they were, you know, pitching products at the fair, doing demonstrations, and then, you know, took their skill set to television. I mean, Ron Popeil was, you know, had little kitchen tools that he was on the boardwalk in Atlantic City demonstrating, and, you know, as a teenager. And, you know, those kinds of people often develop these people skills, and they can read a crowd, which of course we can't do really these days when we're marketing a product, you know, online. But if you can look out and read a crowd and see what engages them and what they're paying attention to, like, that helps a lot. And that was a skill set that these guys developed, having, you know, done it in person. I mean, you can still go to the county fair and you see someone with a, you know, ShamWow like product that they're demonstrating. I don't know if you've been to the
cookware
fair
or
recently.
something.
Yeah. And, you know, they've got their little headset microphone, and
Yep.
they'll get a crowd around, and, you know, maybe they'll promise they're going to give something away just to draw in that initial crowd. And, you know, they'll engage people, they'll talk to people in the crowd and kind of get them going. And there's an energy and a conviction in the product that really comes through. Like, these people are absolutely convinced that this product will change your life. And that passion is so important, because if you do, you know, if you're, you know, you can't waver at all.
Right.
It has to be this, that people really respond to that, you know, that confidence.
Right.
And, you know, one thing I had always wondered about in the 80s, and then I realized that there was science behind it, was that you had a lot of like English hosts and Australian hosts that were on these infomercials in the early days. Like Anthony Sullivan
Yes.
was one of those English hosts. And what they realized was actually Americans would be more convinced if it was an English person speaking, because they sounded like more authoritative. I don't know. We thought that if you're English, like you probably know what you're talking about
Right.
more
You're
than an
smarter, more
American.
sophisticated. Right.
Right.
Yep.
And so they started bringing over all of these English like hosts to do these infomercials, because they realized that, you know, it worked, which is really just, you know, just more, speaks more to the kind of science behind a lot of what they were doing, which is really interesting.
Yeah, because it seemed like the show aspect of it, the energy, the flair, that's the art maybe behind it, is that you need a true artist or a person who's, you know, almost like a theater actor, can play the part and can sell the story. But then there's the science behind it of how you build the blocks to get to the highest conversion rate possible, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's thinking through sort of every element of the show. You know, I think Greg Renker of Guffey Renker, which is, you know, one of the biggest direct response companies, you know, when he was thinking about Proactive in the early days, one of the big complaints they got was that as an acne product, it dried out your skin. And so from that point on, he said, anytime we show the bottles of Proactive, I want to show water sort of surrounding those bottles. I want, you know, drops of water on the bottle. I want a waterfall behind it. I want to counteract that perception of drying out your skin with liquid, with water.
That's amazing.
And you know, the soft drink companies, you know, Coke and Pepsi would often you'll still see
condensation,
droplets of water,
right,
and condensation, because it just makes it that much more. This was sort of different, because this was an acne product that you're not supposed to drink. So it's not supposed to feel like this is a refreshing beverage, but it was a psychological tactic to counter up that idea that maybe this is going to dry out your skin. And so there was, you know, there was a lot of this sort of science that went into sort of building every element of, you know, of the infomercial. From, you know, I always thought it was interesting. They would, you know, when they would show you a before and after, they would always, the before would often be in black and white, or they would even just desaturate the color a little bit. And you
Sure.
still, I mean, you still see this today, um, in commercials where, the before is really supposed to be joyless and void of color and void of happiness and void of promise. And then when I show you the product's going to change your life, they'll saturate it even more. They'll make it more colorful, more vibrant.
Yep.
They'll make the picture sharper, right?
Yep.
They'll make the before blurry. They'll make the after sharper. I mean, that's just very subtle often, but it, psychologically it works. It's this was your miserable life before, and this is how great your life will be
Right.
once you buy this
And
product.
you see that a lot in the fitness space too, like why P90X probably did so well is because they were constantly, and I think you touched on this in the book too about testimonials, but like how many people they showed who were fat and miserable. And then they became these, and you even saw a change not only in their tone and energy, but in the color of how they used the scenes, because it was always
Yeah,
you were sitting in a dark room in an old
yeah,
lounger and they're fat on the floor or whatever it is, and
yeah,
in this vibrant environment, sweating and looking good and
yeah.
that stuff. Yeah.
There's a like in the before, if it's a kitchen product, in the before there are a lot of dirty dishes piled up in the sink, and
Hmm.
then in the after, the kitchen is spotless. It's like it has nothing to do with the product, but it's just like, I mean, it's not a product that's going to do your dishes for you. It wasn't a dishwasher. It was a
You're right. And now that
it
now that you say
but
that, I mean, I think about that with every single sort of kitchen product, the egg things or
yeah,
the stovetop dishes and pans and different things like that, the ceramic and things that just fly off the eggs. And but when they do the before, it's always this, yeah, dirty sink, dirty household. And yeah, it's amazing what people can learn from it. So Remy,
for
you talked
sure.
about that you obviously you're still a writer and you're writing from time to time, but you're doing a lot of consulting. Are you consulting companies on this type of marketing or general marketing and helping people build their strategy?
I'm really focused on digital strategy, so
Hmm.
helping, not just with regard to commerce, but helping a lot of digital media companies kind of create successful digital businesses that
Mm.
are mostly ad supported businesses. So a lot of different media and news organizations create really successful digital media products, websites, apps. So I've been doing that for the last 10 years or so.
Yeah,
Infomercial book really came out of just I just as a teenager watched. There was nothing else on, if you remember, in the 80s. Like
absolutely.
you turned on the TV late at night and you saw these amazing demonstrations. And, I mean, there was one for a car product where they would set a car on fire just to show you um, how amazing this
Was it like a
uh,
wax or something, right? Or
it was a
cleaner?
wax. I'm trying to remember the name of
Yeah,
the product. It was and you could set your car on fire, and it was just amazing television back in the day. And so I would watch these, and occasionally, would beg my mom for her credit card so I could order some of these products and try them out. And of course, they didn't always work as expected. And then also just loved the sort of these hucksters with get rich quick schemes, which I also invariably as a teenager thought I was going to become a millionaire and show my parents, and bought a
yes.
couple of those. I'm gonna buy real estate for no money down and become a real estate
Oh, the
kingpin.
no money down commercials. I
Uh,
remember that guy walking around the houses. And you know what's funny, Remy, is, and I'm sure you're noticing this, is the people that have lasted kind of through the generations and different, so who have evolved with marketing. Because like a guy I follow really closely is Russell Brunson, and he's always doing programs with one of the early, well, two of the early infomercial pioneers, which Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi. And they're still in the game today, but they've just evolved their marketing over time. And I just think that that's so interesting, and it's really cool to actually see them talk about it now. But I remember Dean's programs were something about selling cars, flipping cars or something like that. That was like one of his early ones. And of course Tony's were all the personal power products and different things like that.
And Tony is, um, I met Tony very briefly years ago, and I mean, he is so electrifying. You can see why people pay him so much money just to go to one of his multi-day courses. It's just like I felt like I was like electrocuted, just
Right.
shaking his hand and looking at him. I mean, he could start a cult and have millions of followers in an
Yeah.
instant. I mean, he's just such a presence. Um, and he is still at it. I mean, he's not really on television with traditional infomercials anymore. He doesn't really have to, because he can do he has a big enough following these days where he can do these seminars and charge people $50,000 to attend a 4-day seminar in Hawaii. But a lot of these guys are still around. They've kind of reinvented themselves as sort of the culture has changed a little bit, and certain things have gone out of style and new things have come into style. Some have done so well and have made so much money that they've retired and don't have to be doing this anymore. So it's and then there are a whole bunch that have gone to jail because they promised the cure for cancer on television late at night, and eventually the FTC caught up with them and shut them down. So
Right.
it's a mix.
Yes. That's interesting that you say that about Tony, because um, somebody who I interviewed a couple weeks ago, Catherine Jones, she said people pay for proximity, and it's what's really interesting about when you and I were growing up. You're probably just a few years older than me because I was growing up in the '80s as well. Um, but that indirectly, those guys, just like you met with Ron Popeil, it's like those guys, those men and women who were on those infomercials became TV stars
Yeah.
just because, and I don't think that that was their initial intention. I'm sure for the ego part of it, they loved being on TV, but now Tony has turned that into, again, like you said, they'll pay for the date with Destiny and you'll pay him $25,000 to be in the same room with him. It's more about proximity than is even about the content, which is so interesting that that's happened.
Yeah, they everybody was seeing them late at night, and so they just became pop culture figures. I mean,
Right.
how many Tony Robbins has been I think impersonated on Saturday Night Live 3 times. Like you've got to reach a certain level of pop culture status before they're making skits about you
Right.
on SNL, and that happened to a whole bunch of infomercial stars where they just uh, I think um, Jim Carrey on his skit show back in the day,
In living color. Yeah.
yeah, did a whole bunch of impersonations of infomercial stars.
And even Dan
Even
Aykroyd with the '70s SNL when he did
yes,
like the,
Pocket Fisherman. Yep.
yeah, the fish Vegemadict, whatever it was. Like, yeah, that
Yeah.
fantastic to rewatch that.
Yeah. I mean, it just speaks to what a big presence they had in all of our lives, because they were, if you think about it, they were on TV more than the stars of 80s TV shows.
Right. Because they
You
were
might
buying those
watch.
late night, low dollar, kind of excess TV ads that the TV
Yeah.
stations just needed to fill. Right.
I mean, there were nights where you could flip the channels and see, a Tony Robbins on 3 different stations all at the same time.
Right.
And the TV star of the biggest show might be on 1 hour a week, and then Tony Robbins might be on 25 hours a week, given all the spots that were getting purchased on all these stations late at night, as as the cable universe grew, and there was all this airtime that had to be filled, and all of these cable networks realized, hey, we can sell all this time
Yeah.
to companies who produce infomercials.
So Remy, before I ask you I'll probably keep it short and ask you one rapid fire question. But what do you think? So this, the show really, this podcast is really about tips, tools, and tricks. What do you think people can do today, learning from the great marketers of the past that, some are still going? But what do you think with the digital tools that we have these days with social media? How can how can we use it? Because I'm thinking about that all the time. Like I'm trying to think about these irresistible offers or how we package something. I even did a parody. I had my team and I did a parody of an infomercial last year to sell season tickets to our track because I wanted to show all the value that was inside of the package. It's really hard to explain. So I was like, well, let's just try to make it entertaining and do it in an infomercial that we can use on social. But what do you recommend for people out there to maybe use some of these things, or what do you recommend how people can use social to maybe use some of these tactics?
I think the value of testing can't really be underestimated, right?
Okay.
So if you create something for social, can you do several versions and test it with a small percentage of your audience to see what works best before you actually post it for everyone to see. I think that's something that you can really take from infomercials that really is valuable today. Is that emphasis on testing? I think way too many people just create something and put it out there without thinking if this is going to work. And there's really no way that you're going to know that anything is going to work unless you really test it.
Yep.
And I think that's hard because testing by its very nature sort of calls into question your ability to make decisions. Like, I know what works with my audience. I know how to sell this product. Nobody knows this product better than I do. It calls into question that, right? Because you may not know what the best way to present this offer to your audience is. So I find that people are kind of sometimes resistant to testing, and they'll say that, oh, I believe in data, but that's hard, especially for strong-willed marketing folks. Like they don't, it's like you're saying that I don't know I don't know how to market my product. Well, I'm not saying you don't know how to market your product. I'm just saying that you have to be open to the fact that there may be different approaches here that you could make, and you need to figure out what's going to perform the best. And so why would you not take an advantage to test it?
That's
Um,
that's great advice.
and certainly on the web, it's sometimes a little bit harder with social, but certainly on the web, you can be running tests on your website if you're selling a product. I mean, that's so easy to do. There's so many tools to have, a different offer randomly appear to every visitor who hits your website, change out the call to action, maybe adjust pricing. You can adjust it so that it depends on how they arrived at your website. So for people who come to my website from Facebook, I'm going to show them this. For people who arrive direct, I'm going to show them this. For people who arrive through this funnel, I'm going to show them this, and dig into the data and run as many tests as you can to see what works the best, and then take that learning and take it to social. um, yeah.
Absolutely. So here's my one rapid fire question. Um, what is the book that you gift most often,
Oh, the
other
book
than your
that
own?
um Whew, that's a tough one because I have to say I have been purchasing mostly kids books recently because
Me
I've
too.
got three kids myself and my sister as well, and so I've just been buying a lot of kids books. So yeah, I don't have a good answer to that one. What have I purchased recently?
Yeah, or
Um,
has there been a favorite book over the last couple of years that really struck you, and probably in the business sense?
Good book that I've read in the last couple of years. I mean,
I know it's going to
I
strike you like a
really,
lightning bolt.
yeah, no, I was gonna say I'm a big for marketing. I'm a big fan of he's a professor, Robert Cialdini. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've ever heard of him, and he's got a book called um, that came out, I guess, in probably 3-4 years ago. He's had a number of books that have come out,
Right.
but his books on the psychology of persuasion and
Yes.
how to convince people of things I think are tremendous. It's a tremendous sort of series of books. So I would recommend those if you're kind of really interested in figuring out better ways to sort of influence people and better ways to sort of convince people of something. They're tremendous.
Excellent.
Um,
Those are
pre,
great
pre,
recommendations. And I know
yeah,
you touch on that in the book.
persuasion is yeah. It's really they're really good,
Yep.
and all
Great.
bestsellers.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and being willing to do this. I'll be putting links to the book in the show notes, and wish you all the best with the
Thank you
coaching
so
and
much.
consulting and all the writing that
Thank you.
you're to do in the future. So, where can people find you, Remy, if they want to reach out or if they just want to learn more about what you're doing?
If they want to reach out, they can just go to remystern.com, and my email address is there. It's REMYSTERN.com.
Perfect, man.
Yeah,
All right. Well, thank you so much again for being on the podcast, and
sure.
catch up with you soon.
Great. Thank you. Good to
Thanks,
talk to
Remy.
you.